see here.
Embiid stepping back and stroking two. Bogdanovich thinking about a three. There it is. Yes!
See it again. No double team help, and Embiid takes it right to the rack.
Embiid, step back, jumper, you bet.
There he is again. The Euro step there. Embiid getting Gobert to fight. Nice feed to Embiid.
What's going on, everybody? We're recording this at 8:40 almost, actually, on October 30th. It's been almost over a whole month since the last episode of the pod. Sixers and the NBA season is in full effect. We have just enough information to drink a lot of alcohol because of it and scratch our heads in curiosity as to how this team or that team is doing so well to sort of dive into what is going on in Philadelphia. I brought in pal of mine, Bryan Toporek of Bleacher Report, of Forbes, Liberty Ballers. Bryan, how are you?
I am doing well. I'm excited. The NBA season just started on Friday. It's been great. Great couple days.
Yeah, exactly. So, Bryan, what is going on in Philadelphia with the cue the whole win horse? You got to do the whole point. All of the preseason hype, they're 4-0. Tyrese Maxey is making every single shot he takes. They get to the regular season, they're like, oh, wait, we forgot. We have to actually show up and try hard to win games. They started out 0-3. Was it the most miserable 0-3 you've ever seen?
I don't know about ever, but it certainly wasn't great, especially given the expectations coming into the year. But I mean, like, the Lakers also exist. So maybe we're just being drowned out by them, but I think they might be a little more because, at least like there was still hope, right? They started 0-3, but like, it's like, all right, if they just try a little harder on defense, if Embiid has this plantar fasciitis that no one knew about during the offseason, once he works his way into shape, like the pieces are still there. It still makes sense. This team still should be very good in the regular season. Whereas the Lakers, it's like everything we thought about this team is coming true already. There really does not appear to be much hope for them. So maybe not the most miserable, but certainly not the start to the season that I envisioned for this team.
So let me ask you this. Your worst case scenario, your lowest downside for the Lakers,
Mm-hmm.
have they surpassed that lowest downside with Russell Westbrook?
No, not quite. Because
Wow.
LeBron's still healthy.
Okay.
I mean, and who knows? Like, we're recording this on Sunday night. For all we know, they're gonna go and play Denver tonight and beat Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets, and suddenly we'll have a very different conversation about them. I mean, they brought Russ off the bench on Friday, and he didn't strain his hamstring or accuse that move of resulting in an injury. So that's an upgrade from the preseason. But other than that, no, it's the Lakers are exactly who we thought they were coming into the year.
That's right. Do you think they're going to hit by the end of the season 30% from three? And I say that half jokingly, half,
right.
Oh my God, I'm not sure.
What's the worst shooting team in NBA history? Like what?
I don't know the exact number. I know the Sixers, like in 2008, 2009, shot like 30% on the dot from three. Maybe a little below 30% from three.
Okay. And the Lakers right now are at 23.7 heading into the night. Wow. I mean, if only because I expect them to make a move and maybe they add Buddy Hield and he alone raises their overall team percentage by a couple percentage points. But yeah, shockingly, a team built around LeBron, AD, Russ, and like Lonnie Walker is on paper shooter, but like that was the big move this offseason. But other than that, they got nothing.
That's right. The Lakers and the Nets are the on paper champions of the world. That's your NBA Finals matchup on paper.
Yeah.
Lakers versus Nets. In reality, whoo boy, we'll see if both teams get to the playoffs.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. I wouldn't recommend a team situation where LeBron is your best shooter.
Yeah.
That's not a great place to start.
Yeah.
And right now they're just saying, Juan Toscano Anderson for 3. Oh, not close that time. So it's and every time Anthony Davis shoots a jumper, I kind of lose years on my life. I
Right.
just get a little closer to the basket, maybe try something that's a little bit more mid-range game and not 22 feet out. The bubble is over. We can stop trying to normalize what happened there.
I mean, honestly, I would take what's happened to AD's jumper since if it means winning a championship. Like if Embiid, if they win a title this year and then Embiid shoots 20% from the mid range for the rest of his career, happy to make that trade off.
Okay. Wow. All right. So 3 and 4. I think we all expected that this team would not be a great defensive team because that's innately what happens when you have a starting backcourt that is James Harden and Tyrese Maxey, and they're trying to switch things. You're inevitably going to get a smaller or a less than enthused veteran guard named James Harden to try to defend, unfavorable matchups. You also have PJ Tucker, who is, a veteran who is going to just have nights where he can't keep up with younger, fresher guys. And then you have Daniel House, who is just kind of like if he breaks even, it's a good signing. And, Matisse Thybulle, who is great if he can play in games. But I don't know that I expected the defense to be this bad in the early round. I think I guess when you boil down a 3 and 4 start to one or two things, what are those one or two things?
I mean, everyone has written about it, myself included, but it has been probably the biggest factor. Their transition defense is literally the worst in the league right now. It's gotten better over the last 2 games on the bright side. Before, I think after that first Toronto game, they were giving up, I believe, 159.7 points per 100 plays in transition, somewhere around 159. Now they're down to 146.7. So really making strides.
Progress.
Yeah, but still the worst in the league. Not as much by far. Like it used to be, they were so much further ahead of the next worst team, and now they're like right in the mix with Detroit and Memphis, which is nice to see. But yeah, I mean it's just been abysmal. I know they've asked the guys about it. I think I want to give them a break to some extent because they are integrating so many new pieces. PJ Tucker, D'Anthony Melton, Montrezl Harrell, Daniel House Jr., who, of all the guys who are not catching flack so far, Daniel House does not seem to be, but he has been very underwhelming relative to the expectations we probably had for him coming into the season. And, they didn't really play Matisse until these last 2 games. And all of a sudden they're playing Matisse. And surprise, surprise, the defense is not as horrific. So I think, it's part of it is just them establishing chemistry with a bunch of new guys on the fly. And, guys who weren't in the system before. Like Matisse has, I think Daniel House by the end of the season, their hope is that he's going to be above Matisse in the playoff rotation. But early in the season, Matisse has been in the system before. He's played with these guys before. He is inherently going to have an edge in that regard. So I think, it seems like they are trying to do things to get themselves ready for the playoffs in the regular season, which is a good development overall, but it is going to lead to some early season lumps.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, with Daniel House Jr., I think the way that I think the Sixers kind of view it, especially under the Daryl Morey regime, is how is this player performing relative to players that were acquired this offseason by any team at this price level? Is he playing, on average as well as they are? Did we miss somebody else there? And I think right now, I never expected him to be a stopper defensively. I mean, in the preseason when I was watching him play, it was more like this guy's just going to chase guys around the floor and maneuver around screens the most efficient way and just kind of make offensive players work to get to the ball. And he's not going to win every individual assignment. It's why he's a biannual exception signing. I think the one thing that's really going to be like this guy can't play and it was a waste of a signing. If it persists, of course, is the fact that he's shooting 27% from three. Can't have that, and that's grounds for do we give Thibault a chance? And if Thibault can make 36%, 35% of his threes, not only would that be a new career high and a game changer for him and for the team, but that would definitely put him up in the rotation over House Jr. But the thing about the transition defense, which has just been unbelievably bad, like impossibly bad. Usually when you have transition defense, like you usually see like, okay, if transition defense is that bad, it's usually because you're trying to throw, multiple guys on the offensive glass.
Yeah.
Except are 30th in the NBA in offensive rebound percentage. They are rebounding 20% of their own missed shots. So you don't have the give and take that you usually see with transition defense. And not only are they giving up 6.9 points added per 100 possessions in transition, which is 30th in the league, they're also not getting offensive rebounds, which is the way that you excuse bad transition defenses by creating extra possessions. They're not doing it either. So it's all around a shit show. And it's an incredible shit show. I think like you can attribute a lot of that to effort. And I think it surprisingly does not help that you have Joel, who, if he doesn't get a touch when he thinks he has an advantage, bumps his shoulders and kind of is like, what, and then you have James, who, if he feels like there's contact, he stares at the referee. They also have Tyrese, who has now adopted that habit as well, and Tobias, who gets hit all the time and thinks he gets fouled all the time. You have four guys on the court who all think that they're getting fouled at all times and do not get back. I wonder why it's I wonder why.
Well, and like just structurally, when Embiid's posting up, he's just going to be under the basket. He has the furthest distance to travel, or oftentimes he'll like throw up a layup and then fall to the ground, and you're just going to have a numbers advantage anyway. And then, I mean, like I can excuse some of that, but there were possessions, especially against the Raptors, who, are the best transition team in the league. Like they run their highest percentage of possessions in transition, should be the number one thing on the scouting report. Limit turnovers. If they get a rebound, everyone run back as fast as possible. And there were times where the Sixers had a numbers advantage, but like three guys converged under the basket. No one communicated and left shooters wide open on the corners. And it's like, it seems like they had never played basketball with one another before, which is the case for some of them, I guess, but not all of them. A lot of these guys have come back from last year.
Yeah. I mean, 4 of the 5 starters are returned. Their offseason acquisitions, Trez Harrell was playing like 8-9 minutes a game.
Yeah.
House Jr. is playing a little bit, like around. I would, without looking at the exact number, I think I've seen him so infrequently. I feel like that's basically where he is as well in the Trez tier. So most of it's return guys. There's no excuse unless they've decided to say, like, what, we have the personnel to be full-time switching. We weren't doing that as much last year. Right. Let's really just, and then in that case, I can understand if you have guys that are just trying to, figure out the switch rules in real time, which I can understand that, but it doesn't excuse the horrendous effort of actually getting back in transition. They don't have a good first step back towards defense in transition because, like you said, Joel is falling down. He's arguing with the ref. He is doing whatever he's doing. You have 3 other guys who naturally are complaining and flailing their arms and asking why the call wasn't made while the team runs back. So every possession is basically like every missed shot, every turnover is essentially a free point right now. I mean, if we look at like even what Synergy says the Sixers are giving up 1.203 points per possession in transition. That is extremely poor. It ranks 3rd percentile. So
Okay.
it's literally it's basically the equivalent of a free throw every time the Sixers don't score. And even when they do score, teams are just getting out and running back. They're like inbounding the ball, outlet pass, boom, we're scoring too. So that's 100% an effort and focus thing. I do wonder if that continues. And I think they're getting a little better. I think they were 25th in the NBA in defense last I checked a couple days ago. They're now 20th after they beat the breaks off Toronto, and they beat the Bulls last night. So they're getting better there. But I do wonder if that continues. Like, what is your first move? Do you go to, bringing Tobias off the bench, move PJ to the 4, and, put Thibault in there? I think my first move is to replace PJ with D'Anthony Melton would be my first, just because I think he's athletic. He really can junk up the passing lanes. He's got a sneakily strong first pivot away from when he rotates on defense, he can drop down and block shots off the backboard. If the cutter on the strong side is there, he had a play like that last night. So I think just his athleticism and his ability to sort of get involved and create chaos for opposing offenses is something the Sixers can benefit from on both ends.
Yeah, totally. And he was didn't have a great first couple games, but it really seems like he's starting to find his way and figure out his role on the team. And he provides something, especially some level of athleticism that they're really otherwise lacking. I know Doc has bemoaned their lack of speed in the starting lineup, especially. So yeah, I mean, I tweeted this before the Bulls game yesterday, that even if Embiid was back, which he'd return, I would at least consider moving Tobias to the bench and keeping Tucker in there and then bringing Melton in to replace Tobias. And this is nothing some people got on me, were like, why are you blaming Tobias for this? I'm like, I said nothing about Tobias in terms of he's playing terribly and needs to move to the bench. It's more about maximizing everyone's roles. And I was looking specifically at this Bulls matchup where, put Tucker on DeMar DeRozan, who is not going to cook you with lightning quick speed. And then I would have Melton as the primary Zach LaVine defender in the starting lineup there. And maybe this changes on a game-to-game basis. I think the Sixers should be willing to experiment with their starting lineup. I think Maxey, Embiid, Harden are clearly locked in. I know some people have called for Maxey to be a sixth man to get him more run without the other starters. I think there are better ways to do that than bringing your third, at worst, maybe even second best player off the bench. But for Tobias, I do wonder if he sometimes just gets lost in the shuffle in the opening lineup. I think he's been doing exactly what they need him to do. He has been so much better in terms of having that quick trigger from three, which is something we have bemoaned for his entire tenure in Philadelphia, that he would just dribble, and then the decision making was so slow. It's not there this year. He is living up to what he said he was going to do heading into the season, which has been great. But their bench scoring is just so inconsistent at times still, that I wonder if having him as this souped up sixth man might not be best for them long term. So it's a look that I would at least like to see Melton with the other four starters. And again, I think this is the time to do it. I know they got off to a rough start, but in theory, they have the talent to be a top 6 team pretty easily in the East, despite the increased competition there. I want to experiment now instead of running the same stuff for an entire 82-game season, getting to the playoffs, being oh, well, this opponent presents a mismatch for our starting lineup, and we haven't practiced anything different all year.
Yeah, I think now is time to experiment. Do you think that Tobias has the demeanor and the skill set and the physical just attributes to be a guy that can seamlessly play as a lead member of a bench unit versus being a complementary plug-in guy with a starting unit, because I just see this world where he is god awful coming off the
Yeah.
bench. Like, can't make a shot, it just doesn't fit. And you're like, well, now what do we do? Because our starting unit is actually working better, and he is playing poorly. So it's not like it's an easy pivot back to what wasn't to make him better. So I don't know. I feel like I feel like the easiest thing to do, just because of PJ Tucker's glue guy style of play,
Right.
is to bring him off the bench and, let D'Anthony come in and play, start basically have a 3-guard starting unit. I even thought about this morning, like, what if you just cut Montrez, even though they won't do that because it's Montrez.
Right. Sure.
But what if you just cut him and you use PJ as your backup 5, and you toy around with some small ball units that way. Their small ball has been really effective, and it was they beat the brakes off of Toronto the other night, and they were up like 15 in the first quarter, going small with PJ to start. And I don't want him playing a bunch of minutes as a center. Like, that's when you have an opportunity to bring Paul Reed in. I don't know when Paul Reed's ever going to get a chance in the rotation. I just what does the man have to do?
Get Doc Rivers hired, probably.
That's right. Wow. So it's definitely they wouldn't do it, but I think there's a world where you can make Peter Tucker work in the second unit. But you say Tobias comes out and you put D'Anthony in, maybe I think defensively that would be perfect, because you have like 4 smalls, and then you have Joel as the traditional rim protector. You can literally switch everything, and even live with sort of the liability that is Maxey and James, because you have 3 other guys that are plus defenders. I don't think they'll do it, because I just don't think under this regime they've ever been willing to sort of test unusual things out. But I do like the idea. I would just do it a little differently, because I don't see Tobias being a good second unit guy. But that leads me to another question, or another topic. A lot of Doc Rivers talk. It's kind of all we talk about. I don't know if you saw the odds from Jimmy Shapiro this week. He emails anyone who at one point had their email in their Twitter bio, basically on the mailing list for his odds from Bet Online. And Doc was the heavy favorite to be the first coach fired.
Was this before the second Raptors game?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So, I think Doc could be more innovative with the offense they run. It takes them a little too long. It takes them, far too long, quite frankly, to get into their offensive sets. But I just think that ultimately you can yell until you're blue in the face or do whatever you want. You have to put the professional athletes have to put an effort to be
right
players, and at some point, it isn't about the coach.
Yeah. I mean, you can say like they need to be drilling this more in practice, but they don't really have time to practice. Like they're playing every other night basically, and so they've got shoot around, but I don't know how hard they're going at shoot around. Like they'll have a little gap here between the Knicks game on Friday and the Suns game on Monday. So maybe they'll have an actual practice on Saturday or Sunday and like work on their transition defense, especially if it's continues to be an issue this week. But yeah, I mean, it so far the defensive issues feel more effort and just guys not communicating on the court. And, like Doc needs to be on them about that. They need to go out and actually execute it. Otherwise, I mean, I feel like especially this year, his rotations are really going to come under the microscope, just because this is the first year where they've had more guys who deserve minutes than minutes to actually give out. You brought up Paul Reed earlier, who has been on the fringes of the rotation. Matisse, again, like barely played in those first 5 games. I think he played 6 minutes in total. Shake has only played 3 minutes or 3 games. Sorry. Furkan has played 4 minutes in total. And these are guys who they were fixtures of the rotation last year. These were like the key bench guys. So it's going to be tough for Doc. It's going to be impossible, not tough, impossible for Doc to find minutes for all of these guys. So which ones he chooses and who he chooses to pair them with is going to be one of the biggest things that we can really analyze him on. Like we don't, we're not there. We're not seeing what plays he's drawing up, but we do see who he's putting on the floor, which combinations of players he's putting on the floor. And I think there are some nits to pick there, but again, it's so early in the season that I want him to be trying different things. Like I would really hate it if 7 games into the season, he was already rigid about, okay, these are our starting 5. These are our bench 5. These are the exact rotations we're going to use. We're not changing anything up. Like we're going to, when at 6-minute mark, we're going to take Embiid and Maxey out. We're going to bring these 2 guys in. And then 4 minutes later, we're going to take these 2 guys out. Like mess around, man. Like this is the time to do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just like, I'm so used to it with him by now. I'm just sort of like he's going to do what he's going to do. I do think like no matter what he does and no matter what he says, the reception that he will have is negative because the Atlanta series they lose. People will blame that on him. I don't, but people would. And the press conference answers and the fact that he was like poo-pooing the idea of playing Paul Reed and then he played him in the playoffs. And I do think Daryl makes a good point. Like if he were in front of like the media in general have too much access to the head coach or the head coach is talking too much, throughout the course of the season. And if he had to do it that much, he'd make mistakes too. So I think there's some truth to that. I also just think like they've experimented with zone defense a lot more this year, and especially in the last couple of games. They've, I think people are like, they don't have an offense. They don't run plays. They do run plays. It's just that you don't know what the plays are called. Like,
right.
So I do think like he's a better coach than given credit for, but I also like think there are times when I'm like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? So I think he's just about average, probably a little bit above average. And I think, he held the locker room together last season, and that doesn't really matter much to this season. But I just think that like at some point, like we can't just sit here and say every time that a guy doesn't hustle, it's like, oh, we got to fire the coach. Like they haven't, he's lost the locker room. Like you got to perform, you got to play the game, and you have guys that aren't playing the game right now. And maybe that looks different in a month when Joel is more in shape. Maybe that looks different when they're feeling themselves on a win streak. Maybe this early 3-4 start was a really nasty punch in the stomach after they, go 4-0 in the preseason. Maybe they were feeling themselves and forgot they had to actually try. Maybe it's a good thing for them. We'll know more as the days and the weeks pass. But people are never going to chill on him. But definitely, he's not nearly as, I think, bad or as responsible for early struggles as people want to make it out to be. I also think people don't really people say fire the coach and they blame him for things, but I don't think in general we can really know what is truly on him and what isn't on him, because so much of it is like, well, how much is this on the players not executing well versus him saying like, yeah, this is the play I want to run, and then the defense taking that play away and then having to resort to the second or third action. So it's hard to sort of diagnose what exactly is coaching and what isn't.
Right. Didn't he say, was it the Milwaukee game? Didn't he say like Embiid kind of audibled?
Yeah, didn't run the play. Like it was like I don't know. I don't remember if he said it himself, but it was basically like the play it was not the play that we wanted, or something like that.
Right. And he's been saying, like, every press conference, like, we just need to learn to play right, move the ball, space the floor. Like, it's very clear that he's not happy with the current state of the offense.
Yeah. And breaking news from Nick Friedel, Kyrie has deleted his tweet that included a link to the movie Hebrews to, I can't say that. I'm not sure I can say that word on my podcast. So
Right.
Wake Up Black America. So he's deleted the link to he deleted the tweet. So I guess did the Snowflakes win? Is that what happened here? I don't know.
Does that mean he's not promoting this tweet anymore?
It wasn't a promotion. Remember, it was not a promotion. It was
right.
It was a media member who said he did things for clicks. Remember,
it was dehumanizing him. Yes,
that's right. Dehumanizing, just like anti-Semitism is not dehumanization. Apparently,
right.
Wow, incredible! Just the Snowflakes won that one. Wow.
Honestly, kudos to Nick for how he's been covering this situation.
And I thought it was a good back and forth. I think in my young stature in the business, I probably wouldn't have had the fortitude to do that. Yeah. But it was an impressive back and forth, and it by him, and he kept it respectful, even though Kyrie was sort of cutting at him a little bit. So good. Mm-hmm. We'll discuss that, I guess, a little more later. But it was wow, big moment for our country. Just so James Harden,
yes,
better than what you expected at your highest upside, or
no, I mean the highest upside is like Houston Harden is fully back, and that's not true. The first he was really good against Boston, Milwaukee, bad against the Spurs, really good against the Pacers, and has not had a couple great games. The Bulls game especially was just terrible from him. I think especially at this early juncture of the season, it still feels like, Doc is saying it, like they're still working on figuring out the flow of the offense. We saw, that clip from that training camp practice, where they say, like, this is not a democracy, where like everything is flowing through Embiid and Harden and everyone else needs to kind of figure it out. And like, really one of my biggest takeaways from these first 7 games, especially seeing the way that Maxey was cooking in that second Raptors game without Embiid on the floor, is that like, maybe this should be a little bit more of a democracy. Like maybe we shouldn't run every single thing through Embiid and Harden in the half court. And I say that fully knowing that they have one of the most effective half court offenses in the league, but they just aren't running all that much. They're one of the slowest teams in the NBA. So like, I think Harden specifically, he's still not getting by guys the way he used to in his prime. I don't think that's going to happen. Like, he looks better physically than he did last year, but he's still not quite, MVP level James Harden as a scorer. I still hate every single possession where no one else touches the ball. He just dribbles it for 20 seconds and launches it back 3. I think, like, I genuinely wish the Sixers had it in his contract that they could fine him for that, because it's just so egregious. Like, you have way too much talent on this team. This is not your crappy Rockets team where you have to carry everyone. Like, you've got Joel Embiid, you have Tyrese Maxey, you have Tobias Harris, you have to trust your teammates. I will say the emergence of his mid-range game, we saw it teased during all the offseason workout videos, but as we Sixers folks know from over the years, you can't always believe what you see.
I wonder what happened.
Off-season workout videos. So like, that actually trickling over games has been a real revelation for him. And I think that's something that could, if this athletic decline is permanent and he is not able to blow by guys to the extent that he used to be, which, under the Morey ball doctrine that he used to play under, that takes away half of his offense effectively. Adding this mid-range is going to keep defenders more off balance. So that has been good. I would say like I was optimistic about Harden coming into the year, and he's probably been slightly better than I expected, but I was already relatively high on, I think he's going to have a bounce back year.
Do you think he's an all-star this year? Or just
it's so tough. I mean, it's really tough in the East now, too, after you add DeJounte Murray and you add Donovan Mitchell to a conference that already has Darius Garland, Trae Young, Jaylen Brown, if he counts as a guard. I don't know what he's going to be listed as. Yeah. I would hope that voters aren't going to put Kyrie Irving in the game, even if statistically he deserves it.
Careful, you'll get all the truthers on you.
Bring them. But so I think team record is going to be a big factor here. It's just so early to say that either way. Jalen Brunson, even. I mean, Fred VanVleet, Bradley Beal, like Melo hasn't played, but he's here. Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Tyrese Halliburton. It's about to say Kyle Lowry, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say he's not really an outside consideration this year. But there are 2 starting spots, 2 reserve spots, 2 wild card spots. So 6 guards at absolute most getting into the East. So I know Zach Lowe is a big proponent of this rule, and Daryl on the Rights to Ricky Sanchez pod when he was talking about roster cuts was a big proponent of the move. Where if you're saying he is an all-star, you have to leave out. All right, you can name 5 other guards at most. So tell me who you're leaving out. Drew Holiday is another one who could be in that mix. So I don't know. I think team record is going to be a big factor here. But
yeah,
if the Sixers are like a top 3 seed, sure, he could be in there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know yet. I think statistically he's going to be in the mix, like 22, 9, and 7. Those are all-star level numbers. He'll probably be in the mix. Yeah. I don't know what that looks like if they're a 4 seed or a 5 seed. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see about that. But I do think you hit it on the head with the emergence of the mid-range game. Just for context, he shot 67. He took 67 field goals plus 19 fouls drawn last year in the mid-range with the Sixers. I'll even put it this way: we'll call it long mid-range. So last season with the Sixers, he attempted 11 shots plus 2 fouls in the mid-range. This season, he's attempted 20 plus 1. So he's already surpassed his total from last year, 7 games into the year.
There you go.
I wasn't so attentive to early career James Harden or Houston James Harden. I never felt like he was a superb athlete. Like he was, I thought he was a jump shot reliant guy who used that to get an edge and then drive when he had that. I think he's been pretty good at beating guys off the dribble thus far this year. He hasn't really gotten like stonewalled by anybody from what I can remember off the top of my head. Certainly better than he was last year, which isn't saying much. But
yeah, right.
I definitely think he's been better. But I think he's just been like he's seeing like, okay, if I have the space from like 15, 16 feet out, I'm just going to rise up and take this. Or I'm not going to try to get at the rim because my shooting at the rim, from what I feel like I remember, hasn't been great at the rim this year. He's shooting 57%, which is in the 44 percentile, so not great. But it's a low volume of attempts thus far. So he's probably thinking I'm not as comfortable or as confident that I can get all the way to the rim and get a bucket here, because I think one of the things that we miss is when he's going for a layup and someone hits him on the wrist or he gets slapped on the forearm and loses the ball off his leg, or that counts as a shot, even though it doesn't get all the way to the rim. It counts as a shot because the scorekeeper decides that, I guess. So, he can go 2 for 12, but really he's only taking 7 or 8 actual shots. The other 4 are just him getting smacked on the way, and he loses the ball out of, and it goes up. So, yeah, I don't know how much noise there is in that, but I do think that, number one, he looks comfortable posting up. He had a post up the other night against the Bulls. He's had a couple shots around the elbow where it was like, I'm just going to use this as like a step back. I think he's kind of saying like, what if I just do the same things I've always done, but 5 or 6 feet closer to the basket? So even on nights where my legs feel short, I can still get the ball there and have a chance. Whereas last year I couldn't. But I think all the way around, if he's had a 29-point game, he's had 2 30-point games already against 2 good defenses. If he can, if he's playing at that level, I don't really have many concerns. We'll see how consistent it is. I don't know if last night was more of legs on the second night of the back-to-back. We'll see, what that looks like as the season goes on. But I think Kyle Neubeck said it best. Like, if they're getting this level of play from James and Joel is Joel, then the 3 and 4 start, or at that point it was 0 and 3 or whatever, doesn't really matter. They're going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, James was the biggest question hanging over them coming into the year. Like, was last year's version what we have to expect moving forward? And I think so far, despite his struggles against the Bulls, the answer is no.
Yeah. And I do think, like, the ball movement, to your point about the offense, and I can go more into that, but I don't mind the isolation plays because it's like when those shots are falling, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
This is a superstar shot creator who can do whatever he wants. And then when they're not falling, you're like, oh, this is a waste of the possession. So and I think that it's like that's the extreme low side is when he does have bad shooting nights, it can really bleed into your transition offense or defense because it's going the other way immediately, and then there's no one back because it's a long rebound.
Right.
So I think the bad games look uglier than the good games look good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like how many times
word salad.
Like he had, was it Miami game 4 where he went off in the fourth quarter last year in the playoffs?
It was like he hit like 4 threes in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so like I just feel like we haven't seen many of those types of games from him since he's been here, and it's been more of these, the low games have been more frequent than the good isolation games. Like if we're gonna play the ISO game, is it crazy to say I trust Maxey more already than I do?
No, absolutely not. I think you're right. I mean, and I just think like when he has those good moments, it's like this is a game-changing offensive player. You know?
Oh yeah.
And when he is having those bad nights, it's like this is killing the entire team because not only are you not scoring, but you're basically gifting free points the other way, or you're getting guys in foul trouble because they have to foul to stop the ball in transition. So I just think that I wasn't expecting him to have the outburst that he was having early on, and he's had 3 of them already, where he's been huge for them. The 3 is coming back down to earth. I think he's at like 32% from 3 now. Over the last couple of games specifically, he hasn't looked great from 3. Been a little short, but we'll see there. Go over to Maxey's involvement in the offense.
Yeah, and
I guess this is where we'll connect both. I haven't been satisfied with that even a little bit. Not near. I mean, I think last night they kind of got back into the game by going a little bit more pick and roll based with Tyree. But overall, it's been way too much catch and shoot from him, and not enough actual like put him on the ball and let him use his speed to create advantages for the team. It's been too much. It's been too much. James Harden is our point guard, and we're going to treat him as such.
Yes.
Let it be a by. It should be more of a by committee, by opponent, and we'll see what the matchup gives us. But I thought last night was like the perfect example. There was one play early in the first where Joel hits a screen and opens up, and it's like in his middle of the floor. James, threads the needle to him on a bounce pass Joel is short rolling, kicks it to Tyrese in the opposite corner, Tucker screen for him, then hit a three. That was like the perfect cohesive chemistry where all three guys were involved. All three of Harden, Joel, and Tyrese touched the ball, and it created a very easy bucket. And like, I'm not saying Tyrese threes are bad because he's a really good shooter, but you're not putting that speed to use when you limit him to catch and shoot threes. And that speed makes everything better, makes everything easier for everybody because you're collapsing the interior.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it looked like most of these first few games, it's just every single time, just give the ball to James as soon as you cross half court. I said last night, especially later in the game, it seemed like they were actually making a concerted effort to give it to Maxey crossing half court or early in the shot clock to see if he can create anything with his speed in the pick and roll. And if not, then we dump it down to James and we can trust him. Because like, regardless of, how James is shooting on any given night, he is by far the best playmaker on the team. So in that regard, it absolutely makes sense to run a lot of your offense through him. I just don't like doing it necessarily. Give it to him with 21 seconds left. He's going to dribble. Steve Jones. No, Steph No of Sporting News was clipping videos from the Bulls game and like tracked. I think there was one possession where Harden had 20 dribbles and 0 passes. So that's not great. So I think, like Harden is, I think, by far his entry passer on the team. So again, once you're in your half court offense, everyone is set. Sure, run it through him, but like, let's go early in the shot clock. Try to have Tyrese take advantage of his speed, see if he can generate something close to the basket, see if he can just suck in extra defenders on a drive and open up with, either wide open three for someone or like a swing opportunity for someone. And then we can go back to James Harden dribbles the air out of the ball and takes a step back 3 or 4 seconds left on the shot clock.
Yeah. And that's part of like the whole, they take too long to get in their offense. Like they don't have any offense. They do it. It's just that James is dribbling the ball into nothing. It's just killing time on the clock. Now, maybe he reacts different if Joel asserts himself and says, like, I'm screening for you. Go. Just use it and go. Maybe that looks different if something unfolds quickly. But to your point about the entry pass thing, I asked him about this after the I think the Indiana game, I want to say. I was like, I try to find a way to politely not say like Tobias sucks at this. Why are you so good?
Sure, yeah.
and he was, and I was like, what do you see that makes you such a good entry passer? And he was like, I don't know. I just throw it up there and look for the best.
Yeah, just throw it the 7-2 guy. It's not that hard. And yet, it is.
And yet, it's like I just lead him to the basket, throw it to his inside hand, and hope he'll get it. Like, what the hell? I was like, okay, well, maybe
that makes sense. Who knew it was that easy? I couldn't tell from the last couple of years of Sixers basketball.
Yeah. Going over to like the Maxey and the pick and roll stuff.
Yeah.
So the Sixers are like 50th percentile in pick and roll, like points per possession. Pull that number to be exact. So as with the ball handler, they're averaging 0.83 points per possession, which is like just below average. Harden is average, or plays in which Harden is the pick and roll ball handler. It's 0.83, which is pretty good for an individual player as opposed to the overall team number. And really, you look at the distribution of play type, and James's pick and roll number is a little less than, like, it's in second place as the lead play type. Isolation is ahead of that. It'd be better if that was more in first place because, as you said, Harden ISOs aren't great. Having said that, right now they are averaging 1.34 points per possession in Harden ISOs, which is excellent. That's like top 10 percentile of the league.
Yeah.
Tyrese Maxey's pick and roll numbers, I would just, but before I even look at it, I would guess and say that the spot ups are nearly half of his usage. The spot ups are second behind pick and roll ball handling by like 1%. He's averaging 0.8. Their offense is scoring 0.89 basically points per possession, which is pretty good. I don't understand why they're not experimenting with that more. It is something that I want to see more of as the season goes on. Just not limiting Tyrese. And maybe it's because James isn't a willing or great catch and shoot guy, but he's looks so bad doing that this season. But it's funny, like he's more than happy to catch and shoot off of an offensive rebound, but if he has to like catch and shoot off of a pass from the perimeter, it's like I'm bored.
I know it's one area that I was hopeful that he was going to be better at, because it seemed like he was working on this offseason. Maybe he'll come around in due time, because I know last year after he arrived, he's like, I haven't had to do this in 10 years, which I don't know if that's true, because you did just play with KD and Kyrie in Brooklyn, but
and Chris Paul.
Right. Like I think that was more a choice that like I'm sure your previous teams would have also liked you to do that more. And in general, I would just like to see more off-ball movement, especially from him, but really like all of the Sixers. It seems like they might just be so focused on the spacing element right now, especially when Embiid's on the floor. Like, we're not trying to muck things up and have guys crossing into the lane and sending extra defenders at Embiid as we're trying to throw an entry pass. So we're just going to all stay parked in the corner. But in that first Toronto game, like, the Toronto guys are just running everywhere on every possession. And the Sixers were all just kind of like standing still in their respective spots along the perimeter. It's like, you're not making them work at all. They just get to hang out, catch their breath.
It's been it's been very slow to start. I would call it offensive development. But to the point about the Harden press conference, maybe not as factually inaccurate as Kyrie's most recent press conference, but still
high bar to clear. Very high bar to clear.
He was playing with all these ball dominant players. Like, I think they can get more out of that. I mean, there's no reason that this pick and roll shouldn't be either pick and roll really with Joel and Tyrese and James and Joel, whatever. There's no reason that can't be more effective than 0.83 points per possession. Like, they have the tools to be, and some of it comes down to like Joel's willingness to be a screener and. I'm going to open up out of this. And, he wasn't setting great screens last night. He is not a great screener. And, he'll lose the ball if he decides to go right into traffic with it. But last night he was getting whatever he wanted at the rim against Chicago, which is a low bar. But still, Joel's body language and conditioning has been something thus far. And it was very smart of him to bring out his son for the press conference after the Spurs lost. It was a brilliant move by him. He knew that no one was going to grill him in front of his son, so he brought his son out. Maybe that wasn't the reason why he did it, but I know Joel is smart enough where he would have been like, I wonder if this will lighten the mood a little bit. So,
I mean, when I go back to what I said earlier about like the, Doc saying this isn't a democracy, to me it feels like Embiid is still operating in this mode where he has to do everything. And I just don't think that's true. Like, to your point, I would like to see some possession. Like, you have no expectation of touching the ball. Your entire purpose on this possession is just set hard screens and free up your teammates. Or, there was a possession last night where he drove into like a triple team, and like all he had to do was kick it out to the left, and there were two wide open guys, but instead he did this and turned it over. And it's like, this isn't last year anymore. This isn't like, December of last year when Ben Simmons is on the team. You're still waiting for this eventual James Harden trade. You don't have to do everything anymore. Like, you specifically said this during media day. You said like, I can focus more on defense now because I have all this other help, but it does still seem like, I can't tell if it's him just trying to like play his way into shape and that's how he's doing it. But the version of Embiid, I know with, the stats look great, 27 points, almost 10 rebounds, shooting 53%. The efficiency I think that's a career high for him, if I remember correctly. So like on paper, like he's the same old Joel, but I don't know. Maybe this seems like a case where the eye test is telling me one thing that the per game stats are not.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote the same thing last night. Like, I feel like he looked like he was gassed in the fourth quarter, even in the third quarter when Nikola Vucevic like decided to go splash brother and get everything he took. It was because Joel was not agile and was like he was getting beat to spots by Vucevic, who was very slow. So and I felt like even though the box score numbers were good, the eye test was like, not so great. And I do think after the first couple games when he was trying to, just play with force and run into everybody and will them that way, he's definitely got into more of the like, hey, let's get everybody involved here because no one else can score on this team, especially the bench. And he's been whether it was like whether he was getting hard trapped or shaded or soft double teams coming, he was inviting that and trying to make passes. And I think he's an underrated passer because he makes some great looks that guys either just miss or he's setting up the swing pass for somebody else because the defense is out of rotation because they're doubling him. But I just think the body language is very meh, and I don't know if he'll ever learn that, but I'm curious to see how, like, if there was any way to quantify how body language affects the team, how it would affect them. Because there are times when he like looks out of it, he slumps his shoulders, he's like the hand signs, the not getting that. Like there were times in the Boston game where Harden's trying to run and they're trying to get out and transition on offense, and he's 6 or 7 steps behind, and they're waiting for him because he's not getting back. And I do think the plantar fasciitis thing is probably real because he mentioned after the last preseason game that that he had an on and off summer, so maybe it all gets better as season goes on. But early, people have been concerned about Joel, like fans, and I can understand it. Like he despite putting up good numbers, he has not looked like himself, and the defensive side of the ball hasn't been great for him either. That was something he said, I want to be a better defender all throughout games.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hopefully this is just him playing his way back into shape, and if that's the case, I'm more than happy. Like going into the season, we didn't really have any questions about Joel. He's MVP runner-up for 2 straight years. Like, we know what his ceiling is, and there's no reason to think he's not going to get back to that. But yeah, getting back to being more unselfish and figuring out the distribution of touches between him, Maxey, Harden, Tobias, I think that's going to be probably Doc's challenge, or the Sixers coach, whether it's Doc or someone else, their biggest challenge for the rest of the year.
All right. The topic that we've all been waiting for, Kyrie Irving and his press conferences. I think one thing needs to be made abundantly clear. This is so Twitter culture. It would be like, oh, you're condemning Kyrie, but you don't condemn Jeff Bezos so that means that you are only hating him or only giving him flack because he's a black man with an opinion. Like, no, it's that Jeff Bezos. No one called Jeff Bezos a good role model. No one said that he's a good guy. It's like it's the same old thing. Like multiple things can be correct at once. Yes. But what Kyrie is saying is so preposterously ridiculous, and it's scary to think about the fact that he does indeed have an army of people who follow him and are like, this guy is like spewing facts.
Yeah. I personally would like no reporter to ask Kyrie a non-basketball question again. I just don't care about his opinion on anything that isn't about something that happened on the court. Like, he's just proven he is at this point, and like giving these people a microphone. Like, haven't we learned from the last 5 years what happens when we amplify their voices? Like, you can call them out for being wrong, and I guess you can, I think Nick Friedel of ESPN, he's the one who, had the back and forth with Kyrie last night. He handled it in the most respectful manner he possibly could. I don't fault him for, and that's his job. Like, his job is to ask that question. I just wish we didn't even have to bother asking.
Yeah. And it's like Kyrie is a walking contradiction. Like he's I think I mentioned earlier, he's like, don't dehumanize me up here on this podium.
God.
Like, dude, you're sharing content that is spreading dehumanizing misinformation. Like it's hypocritical. And I had this conversation today with somebody, like, the reason that it matters, and like I get it, like, he's entitled to his opinion, and he is. That is true.
Yeah.
He is entitled to his opinion. What you are not entitled to do is to take that, understand that I am an influential individual. I have children who are young and impressionable who look up to me, and I'm going to use that. And I know that my opinions are controversial and maybe even harmful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to spread those to people who are that age, who have platforms, who can be influenced by that and make bad decisions themselves. Like, you're entitled to your opinion, but you also have to realize the power that your opinions can have, and your beliefs can have, especially on those who are 15, 16, 17 years younger than you are.
Yeah.
Who maybe aren't in the safest natural environment. Like maybe there's people who are, who have access to weaponry, who can say, like, what, Kyrie's right. Like, I'm going to go into a down the street and use this, and kill people. Like, that's what those problems can lean into. And no one is saying that, like the whole, you didn't say this about slavery, whatever that. No one is saying that like any of these acts are therefore less bad than what
right.
We're just pointing out the fact that the Kyrie is spreading these things out in public. And if there was any white basketball player who said, yes, slavery was not bad, we would be having the exact same conversation.
Yes.
They're all very heinous things.
Right.
So,
like,
it's ridiculous. Someone in my messages today, I told you this, was like, basically said, like, I believe that Jews, worship to Satan. I'm like, I like basketball. That's what I do.
right.
I don't do, like, and this is like people practice religion and whatnot. This is more, I think religion is more divisive than anything. Then and then it's for some it's a powerful faith. For me, it's like, look what it creates. It creates mass division. We're all just people. That's just there's no need for all of this.
Well, I think you said it right. Like, he has the right to free speech, and we have the right to call him an idiot because he's an idiot.
Fair enough.
That. Like, we should be calling out anyone spreading any sort of hate speech, and that is very much what this falls into. Therefore, I think it is fair game to, ask him about it when he's doing it. I don't care what he's going to say, because if he's sharing that opinion in the first place, I don't want to hear him defend it. Like, there's no defense that's going to be, oh, okay, yeah, actually, you make a really good point, Kyrie. Now I totally no, it's just indefensible behavior. But from a basketball standpoint, like, when they're starting 1-5, when there are all these early season questions about it, now Kyrie, like, it's just always something with Kyrie Irving. Every year, there's always something. Now we've got this going on. Don't blame Kevin Durant for wanting out. Like, he's already requested a trade this offseason, said he's fine. He's put it behind him. But, like, this is, I assume he saw the writing on the wall here. It's just like, you can't count on Kyrie Irving to be a dependable teammate and not to be a distraction. And it is inevitably going to trickle into the locker room when the team governor is calling out one of the star players 2 weeks into the season.
Yeah. I think Bomani said it the best today. Just blow it up.
I mean, he said that, but like they can't because they owe all of their picks to Houston. What's that going to do? You're going to.
You think Houston's seeing all this and they're just like, yes.
Of course they are. Are you kidding? Like, Houston fans are taking the biggest victory lap as well. They should. Like, this has the potential to be the 2020s version of what the Nets did in 2010 or in the 2010s with the Boston trade.
Yeah.
Like, this has such immense disaster potential because, like, what? Kyrie's going to re-sign with the Nets after Jim out?
Yeah.
Like, Kyrie's gone after this year. I'd be shocked if Kyrie stays.
I'd be shocked if they want him back.
Right. I can't imagine, nor should they. And so, okay, you're going to lose him for nothing, most likely. I mean, maybe you somehow trade him during the season. Maybe the Lakers, can pull off some 3-team trade where Russ goes elsewhere, Kyrie goes to the Lakers, and let's say the healed Turner package goes to Brooklyn. Like, that's the absolute best case scenario in that regard. Otherwise, like, you might lose Kyrie for nothing next summer. It's early. I'm not giving up on Ben Simmons yet, but like the 6-game early returns
haven't been pretty.
Not only does he look defensively, he'll get there. He'll get back to maybe not fully what he was, but like he'll get back up to speed. But like, if the hope was that the full year off, he would develop some new radical skill on offense, we certainly haven't seen that yet. And for all of the like Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are a terrible feather, Nick Claxton is a better fit with Ben Simmons offensively.
Remember the Nets fans were like, the poor Nets fans. It's brutal. Brian, before I let you go, what team has surprised you the most, or is like you've been like, oh, this is kind of interesting?
I mean, every tanking team, I feel like, is the right answer. Like, the Jazz are 5-2, the Spurs are 4-2, the Thunder are 500. It's I didn't see. I saw the Jazz not this good, but like they had rotation players, right? Like until they start selling off the Jordan Clarksons and Mike Conleys of the world. Like Colin Sexton's an NBA player, Jared Vanderbilt's an NBA player, Lauri Markkanen's an NBA player. So I didn't think they had worst team in the league potential. I thought the Spurs were going to be the worst team in the league. I thought they were going to be resoundingly the worst team in the league. So you can fully blame me for the Sixers loss to the Spurs. It was pure karma for like how much trash I talked on them for the entire offseason.
They just beat the Timberwolves tonight.
Did they really?
Yeah, they're 5-2. Spurs are 5-2.
What in the hell?
Yeah.
Wow, and they beat the Bulls. Man, good for them. Honestly, it makes me so happy for Brett Brown.
Yeah, he's like, this is awesome. These guys are just like young, and these guys are young. They don't have any money or egos yet, and they're just like, woo.
It's like this is the process, but with good players. This is awesome.
It's like, what if we had a process where we actually drafted guys the first 2?
right. But even Devin Vassell didn't even play.
Yeah, he didn't even play.
Whoa.
But like,
man,
I think like right now what you're seeing is like teams are like, oh, they had a hot start. We're just gonna go there and we're gonna smack them, and they're like, actually, not so much. I think the second, third time you play them, you're probably gonna win those games because But it's been a really good start for them. New Orleans is sneakily my go-to watch right now. They've been a really fun team to just watch, like how they grow together, and I think CJ is like kind of talking me into an All-Star appearance this year. I don't know.
Well, especially given the competition they've lost in the West, but league pass rankings on my podcast, and the Pelicans were my number 1 team this year heading into the season. So I had hopes for the Pelicans. They are honestly surpassing them. But I think I picked them as my 5 seed in the West, and I honestly regret not picking them out of Minnesota, especially after tonight. Yeah,
the Pistons were my 1 seed, and they're 2-5, so not great. But But speaking of all these, the Warriors are 3-4, the Clippers are 2-4. the Sixers suddenly aren't like the 5-alarm fire that they were a week ago.
Yeah, I know. I came up with down bad power rankings on Twitter the other day after the Raptors lost because I was like, God, this is getting bleak quickly. I DM'd you. I was like, I was like, I think at the time their next 11 opponents had winning records. I'm like, this could get to
you texted me
really
like,
really bad.
It could be 3-15. I was like, if they hit 3-15. You're gonna see.
Yeah, heads are gonna roll if they get that. So unless they lose their next 11, I think we're out of the woods there. But yeah, I mean, Miami is 2-5.
Say again.
Miami is 2-5.
Well, I'm not gonna say that I saw that. I didn't see that coming. I won't say that. But
Yeah,
I was like, they're gonna take a natural step back. And I think one thing that we don't talk about that much as an NBA Twitter community is like they gave up a Chua to get Lowry, and then they lost Tucker. Like you just lost 2 starting power forwards for a guy who is looking like he is washed.
Yeah, it's not a good start for Mr. Lowry, that's for sure.
Yeah. Bryan, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitter at BTOPOREK. You can find me our podcast, the NBA podcast, wherever podcasts are found. And I write about the Sixers and salary cap stuff, both at Liberty Ballers and at Forbes Sports. So check me out there. I'm doing a deep dive because effing Woj, man, tried to ruin my weekend with this like upper spending limit thing that he dropped on Friday. So I had something planned. It's a hard cap. It's a hard cap. Just say it's a hard cap.
It's already a hard cap league.
Right, but like this would just be a hard cap for every team. But
this would be a harder hard cap.
Right. But yeah, Mark Stein had a good article about that. Like Woj tweets this upper spending limit thing, and then like Stein had a whole right through already, which I thought was very funny. Literally, it's just the team governors don't like. They're like, hard cap has a negative connotation, so we'll go with upper spending limit instead. It's like I didn't murder someone. I Pop-Tarted them. Like, no, you. You can't just call something out. Like it's still a hard cap. But yeah, I'm gonna write about the new TV deal, especially. I think that's the biggest thing long term. If you're looking like long term team building picture, this new CBA coming up, and then this new TV deal ahead of the 25-26 season is just something to park in the back of your minds for the next couple of years, because all these like guys signing 2-year extensions, not a coincidence when those extensions are going to end.
Yeah. Speaking of extensions, Sixers announced tonight that they are going to pick up Tyrese Maxey's 3rd-year or 4th-year option.
4th year, yep.
No surprise there. That was a no-brainer the way that he's grown. It's like it's probably their best contract on the roster.
By far.
Yeah. All that means is he will be back next season under his rookie scale deal. Then 24-25 is his qualifying offer. I'm guessing they'll probably extend him prior to that and avoid restricted free agency with him. And they'll just give him his max deal then.
Yes. I wrote a thing at Liberty Ballers like after the Hero and Poole deals came through about like how that affects Maxey's market. But again, especially with this, there's the potential. So Woj did in his upper spending limit article mention that the NBA and NBPA are working on how they're going to handle this influx of revenue, because last time ahead of the 2016-17 season, the NBPA was just like, nope, dump it all at once. We're not doing a cap smoothing thing. Like it's going to artificially deflate salaries. So the cap jumped by $24 million. That's what allowed the Warriors to sign Kevin Durant. And here we are. So it sounds like they are going to potentially work out some sort of formula where like they increase the cap gradually over time rather than this like, oh, here's this $40 million jump. Regardless, Maxey's extension, if he does choose to sign it, will start 1 year before then. So they're going to lock in his salary in theory 1 year before then. We'll see what the new CBA says. Maybe they have a mechanism in place to like adjust salaries with the new cap revenue. But Like if it's like, all right, he's at 20% and it's going 1% every year from there, I think you just max him. And because I think the cap is going to rise faster than his contract is going to rise. So that is my early expectation, is that July 1st next year, Tyrese Maxey is going to be a much richer man, to the extent of like, we don't have a cap projection for 24-25 yet, but I'm going to guess it is pushing $200 million by that point.
And when it does come out, I will DM you asking for the formula and how you arrive.
Yes, exactly. Good.
Each number. All right, Bryan. Well, you have a good night. I appreciate it.
All right, you too, man. Take care.
Embiid stepping